I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I think this may be a perfect Red Sox team. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. I wanted to do something fun today, switch it up a little bit. It's gotten pretty monotonous going over just strictly rumors about Bregman and Arenado at this point. So what I set out to do is build the greatest Red Sox team ever assembled. We're talking a full lineup. We're talking a full bench, bullpen, a couple of bullpen arms. We didn't do a full bullpen. That would have been a lot. And a full rotation. I used the greatest players in my mind at each position in Red Sox history. And I'm sure I did it so well, there's not going to be a single ounce of debate. So we're going to start with the lineup here. Specifically, we're going to do it by position. I didn't build the lineup specifically because I think there's a lot of wiggle room there, but we're going to do it by position. I think there are some obvious choices in this mix, right? The biggest and most obvious choice is we got to include Teddy Ballgame, the splendid splinter, the kid before the kid, the greatest pure hitter in the history of the game, and the greatest Red Sox player of all time, Ted Williams, right? You just simply can't make a great Red Sox team or the greatest Red Sox team and not include Ted Williams. So we're going to put him in left field. It's where he played a majority of his games. I think you could put any left fielder in baseball toe-to-toe with Ted Williams, and he's going to come out on top. Excellent way to start this build. Another obvious one is we got to include Big Papi, right? The curse breaker, one of the greatest clutch hitters in the history of the postseason, a staple in Red Sox history, probably for a very long time going to be the heart and soul of the Boston Red Sox. He is, in my opinion, the greatest left-handed hitter I've seen play live. Got to put David Ortiz in there. I'm going to put him in the DH position. I don't personally want him on the field, right? But he's got to be in this lineup somewhere. So we're placing him at that DH spot. Just an absolute fantastic start. Imagine a world in which Ted Williams and David Ortiz hit back-to-back. My God, a straight masterpiece. And the third obvious player we got to fit into this lineup somewhere is Carl Yastrzemski. Not only did this dude play 23 years with the Sox, he had an outrageous 12.5 WAR peak as his personal best. He was a freak bat. Teddy's taken up left field. I think Teddy Ballgame wins that out against Carl Yastrzemski, regardless of how good Yastrzemski was. So we're going to get a little bit cheeky here, and we're going to put Carl Yastrzemski at first base. He did play over 750 games over there at first. Certainly not his primary position, but hey, he could play a little first base, so we're going to stick him at first base. I don't think there's another first baseman that would warrant trying to put Carl Yastrzemski either on the bench or off this team. So those are kind of the three obvious names in this Red Sox greatest team build. From here, it gets a tiny bit trickier. There are still some obvious names, but it does get a bit more debatable. And I think the best way to do this is to fill out the outfield and then move into the infield. In right field, there's actually a pretty good debate to be had here. In my mind, I've been debating between Dwight Evans, who has been a staple for the Red Sox for a longer period of time, right? Won the most Gold Gloves in Red Sox history. A great defender, a great bat, should be a Hall of Famer, and Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts, in his prime with the Red Sox, was unbeatable. He's one of the greatest peaks in Red Sox history. I think you compare their peaks. Dwight Evans looked at like his best with the Red Sox and what Mookie Betts looked like in his best with the Red Sox. It's actually kind of close, but I think Mookie wins this out. He had a higher WAR. He had more doubles. The bat, pretty similar. I'm taking Mookie in this equation, so I'm going to put Mookie Betts in right field. Both similar defenders, actually, so you can make the case for either one of these guys. Personal preference, I'm going to go Mookie Betts. Center field is a really interesting one. I went with Fred Lynn. I think there's a case to be made for a couple of different players here, but I like Fred Lynn in this one. He had, again, a fantastic peak with the Red Sox, a great defender, 4-time Gold Glove winner. We could talk about his bat. It was pretty solid. Did have a little bit of speed with the Red Sox as well. Homegrown, always a positive. I think he makes the most sense in center field. Part of me did want to go with Jacoby Ellsbury in center field just because his peak is kind of unrivaled when it comes to what a center fielder could look like. But if we're straight building out a team, there's a lot of injury concern there. There's a lot of consistency concern there. I'm taking Fred Lynn because of that consistency. Moving into the infield here, second base, it's either Bobby Doerr or it's Dustin Pedroia. I'm going with the laser show, though. Give me the laser show at second base. He was better statistically when it comes to WAR than Bobby Doerr in much lower amount of games. This is the leader. This is the guy who's going to put his life on the line to win some baseball games for this team. I need him at second base. I want him in that leadoff spot as well. Give me the PD Poppy combination in this lineup, and I think we're going to be in a good spot. Defensively, right, you can't go wrong with Pedroia. Offensively, you can't go wrong with Pedroia. You got to love the spark in the clubhouse as well. I just don't think there's any reason to not go Pedroia here, although Bobby Doerr, fantastic player. Shortstop, I think the answer is Nomar. Part of me wanted to go Xander Bogaerts, but Nomar's peak is just flat out unmatched. I mean, the dude hit 323, 357, and 372, and those were his averages back to back to back, just absolutely ridiculous. There is a little bit of injury concern there, especially as he got older, but I think you take that risk for the upside. Xander, in all fairness, was more consistently healthy and does have more rings, but if we're just talking skill alone, I think Nomar takes this every single day. Third base, again, a little bit of debate here because you could kind of make a case for a couple of different people, but I think the answer is Wade Boggs. Again, I did want to kind of go Rafi here for the home run power, but you got plenty of home run power throughout the rest of this lineup, absolutely. Boggs was by far and away the better defender. He was by far and away the better contact hitter, and as of right now, he has the better longevity. We'll see where Devers kind of ends up in this whole mix. He could end up taking over that best third baseman ever spot, but I think right now it's safe to say it's Wade Boggs, which finally just leaves the catching position. Now, this one I think is the closest matchup we've had in terms of my decision making. It was either Jason Varitek or Carlton Fisk. I think you could make a pretty strong case here for Jason Varitek. The dude is/was the captain of this team for years. He's caught more no-hitters than anyone in the history of the game. He's won a couple of World Series, right? He's a leader on the field, off the field, switch hitter, which is extremely versatile. But I kind of want to put Carlton Fisk in this position, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I think the offensive potential is much better. I think they were similar-ish defensively, maybe not as good defensively as Jason Varitek, but I don't think he's not going to be able to hold his own there either. I really want Carlton Fisk in this position. Plus, you get the New Hampshire native, right? This is a guy who grew up in New England. I kind of like that aspect as well. So I'm going to go Carlton Fisk, but in my mind, this was sort of the closest decision I had to make, which leads us to the bench. The bench, I put together 4 players here. I put Jimmy Fox, one of the most underrated players in the history of the game. Honestly, you could make the case that he should be starting at first base over Carl Yastrzemski, but I love Carl Yastrzemski more, so we're going with Carl Yastrzemski at first base. Either way, Jimmy Fox, wildly underrated. I put Jim Rice in there. Obviously, I think you got to put Jim Rice in there. Mashed at Fenway, one of the greatest hitters in Fenway history, Hall of Famer, got to be there. Obviously, you need a backup catcher, and again, it was so close between Tech and Fisk. It has to be Tech. And then finally, you need a lefty in there. You're right. You need a little bit of versatility on the bench. I'm going to go Rafael Devers. I don't know. Sue me. Rafael Devers could very well stack up against some of these guys by the end of his career. I have no doubt in my mind he has the potential to do that. Give me his bat off the bench, and I think this team is in a really good spot. So those are my starting 9 hitters as well as my bench. I don't know, guys. I think I absolutely nailed this one. It's pretty easy to nail, but I think I absolutely nailed it. However, we also got to get a pitching staff together for this team as well. For the rotation, again, there are 2 very obvious names that you can't build a Red Sox rotation without. My ace, my number 1 starter, I'm going Pedro Martinez. This could be up for debate, but I'm not debating it because Pedro, in my eyes, is the greatest pitcher in Red Sox history. His peak is absolutely ridiculous. 3 Cy Youngs in 4 years, and the only reason he didn't win a 4th one is because he came in 2nd place. I mean, it's just flat out ridiculous. He's one of the greatest pitchers ever. Personality-wise, he's one of the greatest personalities in Red Sox history. I want this dude at the top of this rotation. I don't want anyone else, including number 2, Roger Clemens, who might statistically overall have better numbers than Pedro Martinez, but it's pretty close, right? The guy's named the Rocket and no knock Carabas for a reason. He was one of the greatest pitchers of all time in his own right. Having a 1-2 of Pedro and Clemens back-to-back, I don't think you can get any better than that at the front of this rotation. It has to be Pedro Clemens or Clemens Pedro. I don't really care what order they're in. Just put them into this rotation. From here, I don't know, it gets a little bit wonky, right? You can either go best overall player or you can go best peak. Chris Sale's in that conversation. Josh Beckett's in that conversation. I didn't keep any of those guys on there. I went with Cy Young. The dude has an award named after him. He was fantastic for the Red Sox. A little bit of representation from a different era as well. Lefty Grove is another guy I went with in this rotation. Again, kind of like Jimmy Fox, one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball history. Did a lot of incredible things with the Boston Red Sox. And finally, I went Jon Lester. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but Lester, again, you talk peak, was one of the better pitchers in Red Sox history, and you need a big game guy. You need a guy who, hey, 7th game of the World Series, we need a big start. I'm going Jon Lester. He helped win 2 World Series with 2 of the biggest franchises in Major League Baseball. He helped break the Cubs World Series with an incredible performance. We're talking strictly Red Sox here. He was no slouch for the Red Sox in the postseason either. Incredible story, incredible person. I'm going Jon Lester to round out this rotation. I don't care if it's a hot take. I think it makes this rotation better. For the bullpen, I only did 3 names because we'd be sitting here all day trying to debate the best bullpen arms in Red Sox history. I went with Bob Stanley because every time I talk about the bullpen and don't mention Bob Stanley, you old heads yell at me constantly. He was a great pitcher in his own right, so I'm going to include him in this one. The second pitcher I went with was Koji, and I know that's kind of a hot take because he didn't spend a ton of time here, but man, he had an absolute ridiculous run with the Red Sox, one of the better relieving seasons of all time in 2013, one of the greatest postseason performances as a reliever for Red Sox history in 2013, and the other 2 years or 3 years he spent with the Red Sox weren't terrible either. In fact, they were absolutely fantastic. I'm going to put Koji into this conversation, but obviously our closer for the greatest Red Sox team ever is Jonathan Papelbon. I don't know how you do anyone else but Jonathan Papelbon. Most saves in Red Sox history, World Series winner, absolute firehouse out of the back end of that bullpen. It's Jonathan Papelbon, right? You need that fire in that 9th inning. No one brings more fire than Jonathan Papelbon does. I don't think there's any debate as to who should be closing games for the greatest Red Sox team ever. And the final pitcher I want to put in here is a flex pitcher, and it's Tim Wakefield. Mostly because I just simply can't put together a greatest Red Sox team ever without Tim Wakefield on it. It just totally feels wrong. He does lead the Red Sox pitching staff in a whole lot of different categories. This is, again, kind of like Dustin Pedroia, a guy I want on this team who's going to put his life on the line to win baseball games for the Boston Red Sox. I don't know. It just feels weird not putting Tim Wakefield on this team, so I had to find a spot for him somewhere. And the last thing I wanted to put together was a manager. I think there's an obvious choice here, and I think it's Tito, right? It's Terry Francona. He is the greatest Red Sox manager in the history of Red Sox baseball. Curse breaker, kind of like David Ortiz. He's one of the staples in Red Sox history. I don't know. I don't think there's much debate as to whether or not Terry Francona is the greatest Red Sox manager ever. I don't want anyone else managing this team full of just the biggest egos ever, right? Than Terry Francona. I think he helps this team win. And looking at this team overall, I got to tell you guys, I think this team goes undefeated. Well, maybe they go 61-1 and lose a game to the Oakland Athletics or the Chicago White Sox or someone because it's baseball, right? But I don't know, guys. I think I kind of killed this one, and I'm sure you guys adamantly agree with every single one of my choices. There's no way you guys are debating this at all. But let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think? Is this the greatest Red Sox team ever assembled? What would you do differently? And how many games do you think a team like this, set up like this, is going to win? Let me know all your thoughts on the greatest Red Sox team ever, and I hope you enjoyed the break in all of these constant rumors about the Red Sox and Bregman and Arenado. So let me know what you think about this style of video in the comments down below as well. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, best way to do that is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.